The world went silent the moment my body hit the ground. No pain. No movement. Just the blinding glare of the sun in my eyes and the sound of my brother laughing somewhere above me. I didn't know it yet, but within hours that laugh would be replaced by fear. And my family's pride, the image they had worked so hard to protect, would turn them from neglectful to criminal in the eyes of the law. If you've ever had your pain dismissed by the people who were supposed to care for you, if you've ever been told to walk it off when you knew something was deeply wrong, stay with me. Because you're about to hear the story of the day my life broke in two. And before I take you there, do one thing. Hit the like button so more people hear this, and subscribe, because what happened next will make you question everything about family, loyalty, and trust. My name is Audrey. I'm 28 years old, but some memories are so sharp, so raw, that they feel closer than yesterday. I grew up in the Matthews household, the kind of family you might envy from the outside. A pristine white 2-story home in Massachusetts. A father, Douglas Matthews, who was a respected accountant. A mother, Eleanor, who was the definition of a stay-at-home perfectionist. And 2 children who, by every public measure, were success stories. But behind the closed doors of that perfect house, life was less picture-perfect and more performance art. Every smile was rehearsed. Every flaw was hidden. And emotions? Those didn't exist unless they were acceptable. My father stood 6 feet 2 inches, all broad shoulders and stiff posture. A tower of stoicism. He'd been raised by a military man who believed comfort was weakness, and he passed that belief down to us like an heirloom nobody wanted. From scraped knees to broken hearts, the solution was always the same: toughen up. To him, pain wasn't something to acknowledge, it was something to crush before anyone noticed. My mother? She floated in the background, ensuring the image stayed polished. Her love came with conditions. Don't make waves, don't be difficult, don't embarrass the family. She often reminded me, your brother wouldn't complain about something like this. Jason, my brother, was 3 years older and mastered the art of manipulation early. He had the looks, the charm, the athletic trophies. And he had our parents wrapped around his finger. When I was 7, he pushed me off my bike and I broke my wrist. At the ear, my father scolded me for being clumsy. My mother worried about the bill. Jason swore it was an accident and they believed him. When I was 12, he locked me in the basement during a thunderstorm, knowing I was terrified of the dark. At 16, he accidentally ruined my science project hours before it was due. The list was endless, but the verdict was always the same. Jason was blameless and I was too sensitive. By the time I turned 18, I was suffocating. I moved out, went to college in another state, and built a career as a teacher. I surrounded myself with people who cared. I even started therapy to undo the damage. For years, I kept my distance. But family has a way of pulling you back into the storm. It had been 6 months since I'd last seen them when my mother called. Her voice was sweet, almost too sweet. It would mean so much to your brother if you came to his birthday this year. I doubted Jason cared, but excuses were running thin. She said it would be a backyard barbecue, that my father had built a new pool deck. Everyone will be there, she added, meaning Jason's friends, the same people who'd spent years laughing at my expense. Reluctantly, I said yes. She slipped in a familiar reminder: dress nicely. You know how important appearances are to your father. The 2-hour drive was a cocktail of dread and forced optimism. I practiced my therapist's advice: breathe, set boundaries, visualize an exit plan. I pulled into the driveway right at 2 p.m., aiming to avoid too much one-on-one time. The driveway was packed with shiny SUVs and sports cars. Jason's best friend Tyler's red Corvette gleamed in the sunlight. The same Tyler who once helped Jason superglue my locker shut in high school. My mother greeted me with a quick air kiss, her eyes scanning my outfit like a critic at a fashion show. Audrey, you made it. Everyone's out back. Jason's already opened his presents. Inside, a table overflowed with expensive gifts: golf clubs, designer sneakers, even a jet ski key. 6 months earlier, my own birthday gift from them had been a department store voucher. I stepped out into the backyard and instantly felt 30 pairs of eyes sweep over me. My father was by the grill, Jason at the center of a group of laughing men, beer in hand. When he spotted me, his grin was wide but empty. Little sis, you actually showed up. For the first hour, I kept my head down, sipping water, chatting quietly with a couple of spouses who also seemed out of place. But as the afternoon wore on, Jason's voice grew louder, his jokes sharper. And then, as if the crowd needed fresh entertainment, he turned toward me. Remember when Audrey thought the neighbor's dog had rabies? Laughter erupted. Another voice added the story of the hair removal cream prank. Heat climbed my neck. I decided to leave before the humiliation escalated. The new pool deck gleamed, the boards smelling faintly of fresh sealant. My first step onto it was cautious. Too cautious. The surface was slick under my flats like someone had overpeeled it. My second step betrayed me completely. My foot shot forward. My arms flailed. For a brief, terrifying moment, the world slowed. I caught glimpses. My father's brow furrowed, my mother's mouth tightening, Jason's smirk curving into something darker. Then gravity took over. My lower back slammed against the concrete lip of the pool. A sharp, sickening crack followed as the back of my head met the ground. My vision exploded in white and the air in my lungs vanished. Silence. Not just in the yard, inside me. I tried to move my legs. Nothing. Not a twitch. The world shrank to heat and glare and breath that wouldn't come properly. I stared up into the blue and couldn't feel where my legs ended or began. For a handful of heartbeats I told myself it was panic, not paralysis, that if I just inhaled slowly and exhaled even slower, my body would remember me. It didn't. My toes might as well have belonged to someone else. I thought the word legs and got nothing back but silence. Jason, I said or tried to say. Sounded like a dry hinge. I can't move my legs. He leaned into the sun, blotting the light for a second. There was still a half laugh on his mouth, the kind of grin people wear when they're hoping the joke isn't over. You're fine, he said. Breathe. Stop with the theatrics. I'm not. The sentence broke into splinters. I can't move my legs. He blinked once as if my words were too bright to look at. Around us, the party shifted its weight. Someone turned the music down halfway and pretended it was an accident. A beer bottle clinked against the railing. I could smell the grill, meat and smoke, and beneath that something chemical and slick rising off the boards. The deck shouldn't have smelled like that. It shouldn't have felt like that. Let me through, a woman said, and the words moved the air. Sunglasses, neat ponytail, steady hands. She knelt where my panic was and didn't flinch. I'm Rachel. Don't try to move. What's your name? Audrey. Okay, Audrey. Where does it hurt most? Pie back, I said. And my head. I can't feel anything below. I stopped because there aren't good words for avoid. She pressed at points along my shins, my knees, my thighs, looking for answers my nerves wouldn't give. Can you wiggle your toes for me? I tried. We watched my feet together. They were perfectly obedient in their refusal. Behind Rachel, my father arrived like a front moving in, 6'2" and already irritated. For God's sake, he said like he was scolding the weather. The deck is fine. Audrey, get up. You're making a scene at your brother's party. Don't move her, Rachel said without looking up. Possible spinal involvement. My mother's voice was small and sharp at the same time. People are watching. I need an ambulance, I said. The words came out strangely calm as if someone else had borrowed my mouth. Please. Rachel had her phone out before the sentence fell. She spoke to the dispatcher in clean, clipped lines. Female 28 fall onto concrete edge, unconsciousness not confirmed, loss of sensation below waist, possible spinal cord involvement, no movement of lower extremities, vitals pending. Backboard and C-collar, she added. We'll keep her still. A hush took hold. Not silence. There were always little noises, nervous laughter from the far end of the pool, the hiss of fat on hot metal, but the hush that comes when everyone is waiting for someone else to behave like an adult first. I watched my father's face searching for a better story than the one we were in. I watched my mother straighten the hem of her shirt like that might fix the universe. I watched Jason's eyes go wide and then narrow again, the way people squint when they're trying to see a different outcome. Sirens braided themselves into the afternoon and unbraided it again. The gate banged. 2 paramedics in navy turned the backyard into a room with rules. The woman, Sarah, took my name and my breath and the measure of my pain without making me prove any of it. The man, Mike, moved like everything had a place. Oxygen here, monitor there, caller now. Hi, Audrey. I'm Sarah, she said, kneeling where Rachel had been. We're going to keep you very still. We'll do the log roll on 3. Don't help us, okay? Let us do the work. They slid the rigid collar under my neck. The strap was cool and absolute. Rachel held my wrist and named my pulse to keep me tethered to something other than fear. 1, 3, Sarah counted, and they rolled me as a unit onto the backboard. Pain shot up my spine and lit every nerve that still answered their mail. I made a noise I didn't recognize as mine. I know, Sarah said. I know. She didn't say it would be okay. She said we would go. Mike peeled away and crouched near the boards where I'd slipped. He touched the surface with 2 fingers, then rubbed them together. He didn't say anything. He took out a small evidence file and a camera and watched the way the light behaved on the wood. When he came back, Sarah's face tightened a fraction. "Request PD to the scene," she said into her radio. "Possible intentional hazard." My father bristled. "That won't be necessary. This is a family matter." Sarah didn't look up. "Sir, injuries like this are never a family matter." They lifted the board and the sky tilted. The ride across the yard put the beeps from the monitor into my chest like a metronome. Jason took a step forward, mouth parting around some unfinished sentence that forgot itself on the way out. Behind him, my mother's hand hovered near her throat. She looked like someone rehearsing grief for a mirror. In the ambulance, everything was stainless and humming. The oxygen mask smelled faintly of lemon. Sarah's gloved hand on my shoulder might as well have been a lighthouse. "Talk to me, Audrey. Any neck pain? Pressure? Mostly back. Head too bright. Hey, we're almost there." Mike read numbers to someone on the other end of the radio, and those numbers were me, reduced to something the hospital could catch. I counted the splotches in the ceiling panel like they were stars and tried not to think about everything I couldn't feel. I tried not to think about everything I could. The emergency department received us like a storm does windows. Fast, loud, focused. There was a flurry of hands, a curtain, scissors brisk along seams, tape that tugged hair. Someone called out my vitals. Someone else announced the plan. A resident's face hovered, so young, so careful, and vanished again. Then the room steadied around a woman with silver in her hair and certainty in her posture. "Audrey," she said. "I'm Dr. Martinez. I'm the neurosurgeon on call." Her voice was low and clean. "We're going to take you for imaging. You may hear a lot of noise. Try to keep your eyes closed and your thoughts boring." "Boring thoughts," I whispered. "I can try." The MRI was an iron heart beating around me. I listed state capitals until I lost Vermont. I recited the class list from last year's homeroom. I tried to remember the shape of my apartment in the dark. The plant on the counter, the mug with the chip, the soft, ridiculous rug that looked like someone shaved a sheep. When they slid me out, the room felt too wide. "Okay," Dr. Martinez said, appearing again with a tablet that held my bones in black and white. She sat, not looming, and showed me my own spine like she was showing me a map. "You have an incomplete spinal cord injury at the thoracolumbar junction. 2 vertebral fractures. Significant swelling. We need to relieve pressure and stabilize your spine. The sooner we do that, the better your odds of keeping everything we can keep." "Will I?" The rest of the sentence was a cliff. "With incomplete injuries, there's uncertainty," she said. "That uncertainty includes hope. I won't take it away from you, and I won't sell you a version I can't deliver. Our job now is to give your cord every chance to heal and to get you into rehab as soon as it's safe. That's how we move the needle. Consent is a strange sacrament." I signed and felt the pen drag like it was writing on a different life. And then there was brightness and nothing, and a dream where the pool board turned into a runway and I lifted off and my legs were birds. When I woke, the clock had opinions I didn't share. There was a different ache in my back. Deeper, tidier. There were screws where bones used to do the job on their own. Carlos, a nurse with kind eyes, taught me how to drink water like I'd never learned before. I tried to wiggle toes I could not see under the blanket and felt a ghost of something. Not movement. Not yet. But a rumor. "Welcome back," Carlos said. "Pain." "Yes," I said. "And no. It's like I'm a house and some of the rooms are locked." He nodded like he'd been on that tour. "We'll keep knocking." The detectives came when the sun was a suggestion behind the blinds. 2 women, both with the sort of faces that make people tell the truth even when they'd rather not. Detective Sullivan did most of the talking. Officer Chin took notes that felt like sutures. They didn't rush me. When I paused, they let the silence be a chair, not a threat. I told them about the deck and the shine and the way laughter can make a person forget to breathe. I told them, "Walk it off," and "You're ruining the party," and the way Rachel's voice had sounded like a bridge. "To confirm," Sullivan said, "after you reported loss of sensation, there was a delay in calling for emergency services." 15 minutes, maybe 20, I said. Time got weird. And your brother acknowledged placing oil on the deck. In front of people, I said. He called it a joke. Chen's pen paused for the small space between one kind of story and another. Thank you, she said. We know that wasn't easy. After they left, the afternoon stretched and thinned. I slept and woke to the white noise of hospital life. Wheels that squeaked, doors that sighed, a cough several rooms down that had its own rhythm. Dr. Martinez came and translated scans into sentences I could carry. The social worker, Marcus, arrived with a binder and a voice like a path through high grass. This is a lot, he said. We'll take it a piece at a time. We'll talk about inpatient rehab, about home modifications, about what support looks like when the first wave of visitors leaves and the real work begins. Visitors. My parents came the next morning like a weather pattern no one ordered. My mother had a bouquet large enough to hide in. My father had a jaw set to factory settings. Jason trailed like a shadow that didn't know where to attach. How are you? My mother asked as if this were a courtesy call. Her perfume brought the house with it, lemons and denial. I can't move my legs, I said and watched her blink like lights off water. You'll bounce back, my father said the way he says the market will correct. You're tough. He made toughness sound like a door you either have a key to or you don't. Jason looked at the floor like it had offered him a deal. Bad luck, he muttered. Didn't think. The sentence was a tunnel that collapsed in the middle. You didn't, I said. It was the truest thing either of us had ever said to the other. They left without making a mess. That was what we were best at. The days stretched into a ribbon of checks and charts. Nurses learned my jokes and I learned their routes. I learned the taste of the pill that took the edge off nerve pain and the taste of the one that didn't. I learned to sleep between vitals. I learned the faces of the night shift who are their own small country. On day 4, a physiatrist came by and said the word rehab like a horizon. On day 6, a case manager said there was a bed for me at a center with a gym full of parallel bars and stubborn people. On the morning of the transfer, Rachel appeared at the foot of my bed with a paper cup of coffee and a smile that made me feel like I had survived a test I hadn't studied for. I brought caffeine, she said. It's terrible, but it's coffee. You saved me, I told her. I believed you, she said. Sometimes that's the same thing. The rehab center smelled like bleach and effort. The hallway floors were so clean they reflected faces back at you, a reminder to lift your chin. The intake nurse asked the same questions in a different order and made each one sound like a hand offered. David, my physical therapist, met me with a tablet and an expression I would come to recognize as hope wrapped in realism. Here's the deal, he said. We chase what's possible. We respect limits. We celebrate ridiculous things, like 3 seconds of sitting without face planting, like they're Olympic medals. You ready to be ridiculous? I think I was born ridiculous, I said. It made him laugh in a way that sounded like we might actually be in this together. Day 1, sitting. The muscles that used to hold me up like it was nothing had notes now, excuses. 30 seconds felt like an hour. Sweat beaded along my hairline. I learned that effort has a temperature. I learned that stopping just before panic counts as control. When my timer beeped, David said, "That's data," with more joy than numbers usually deserve. Day 2, transfers. A sliding board in gravity and a choreography that made me feel like I'd been given a new alphabet. Left hand here, right hand there, lean, push, breathe. The first time I landed in the chair without assistance, I said, "Huh," out loud like I'd just found money in an old coat pocket. Tasha the tech clapped. "That's you," she said, pointing at the chair, being a problem solver in the wild. Tara arrived in my doorway the next afternoon with bangs she cut herself and a smile that dared bad news to try her. "I'm your neighbor," she announced. "I'm also your unsolicited advice friend. First advice: don't apologize every time you ask for help. It's boring and unnecessary." "I'll try to be interesting and necessary," I said, and she bumped my fist with her knuckles like we were teammates, which I realized we were. Therapy became the clock. Mornings were strength and stretch and the hum of machines whose names I learned and then forgot. Afternoons were function. How to dress in a body that has opinions. How to shower without treating the chair like an enemy. How to cook from a seated position without turning a pot of pasta into a weapon. I learned about pressure relief and skin checks and the quiet emergencies no one tells you about until you need the knowledge like air. I learned to advocate for my own body in a voice that didn't sound like begging. Progress didn't arrive in a straight line. Some days everything was a little easier, like the world had softened its edges. Some days my legs felt like strangers and my hands shook with fatigue and the mirror was a fight I wouldn't pick. Claire, the psychologist, met me where I was, not where anyone thought I should be. You grew up in a house where pain was an inconvenience, she said. You learned to distrust your own signals. We're going to learn a new language. One where your body isn't your enemy. At night the building settled and moaned. I dreamed of the deck sometimes, not the fall but the seconds before it, the way my body knew before my brain did. I woke with my heart galloping and Tara's sleepy voice from the other bed saying, "You're okay. You're not there. You're here. And here is annoying but survivable." One afternoon in week 2, David wheeled me to the parallel bars and handed me the kind of braces that look like serious business. CAFOs, locking my knees, promising a kind of upright I hadn't been in since the party. "We're going to stand," he said. "You will hate it and love it. Both are correct." He and Tasha flanked me. Hands on my gait belt. "On 3, he said. 1, 2, 3. My arms did a thing my legs couldn't. They hauled. The room wobbled. My heart climbed into my throat. And then I was vertical, the world tall again. I cried and laughed at the same time, which is something I recommend at least once. 10 seconds, David said. "That's the goal today." I counted out loud. 8 felt like a mountain. 10 felt like a flag. When I sat again, the chair caught me like a friend. By week 3, sensation returned like gossip. Unreliable, exciting, sometimes cruel. Pins and needles in my thighs that made denim feel like nettles. An itch on my calf that I couldn't scratch where it existed. I learned to trick my brain by scratching nearby, the way you distract a toddler. Hope is a dangerous and necessary thing. I learned to hold it with 2 hands and an asterisk. The detectives visited once more briefly with news that lived somewhere between justice and logistics. Evidence collected. Statements taken. The DA would be in touch. I nodded and did not ask for details that would grow a second head on my worry. Later, alone, I let myself wonder if accountability would look like anything that made sense to a person whose spine had been rearranged for a joke. On a Tuesday that belonged to no one, Rachel stopped by with a takeout coffee and a voice that knew its own boundaries. "I heard they've filed," she said. "Not from gossip. From a nurse who dates a cop who can't keep good news to himself." "Good news," I repeated, tasting the words for bitterness and finding only a complicated sweetness. "You're doing it," she said, nodding at the gym. "The hard thing." "I am 100 small hard things," I said, strung together with tape and sarcasm. The first time I wheeled myself outside, the sun felt like permission. There was a concrete path where patients tested chairs and walkers against the indignities of real ground. Tara showed me how to pop the small front wheels over a crack without launching myself into orbit. A volunteer with a labradoodle introduced the dog like a therapist. "This is Quinn. He thinks all feet are perfect." "Quinn," I told him, "we have some notes." In the evenings, the unit's lounge turned into a tiny town square. Card games. Bad TV. People learning how to go on without pretending it was easy. I met a man who built furniture before a fall changed his job description. Now he was an artist with cedar shavings still ghosting his stories. I met a teenager whose mother braided her hair every night into constellations. I learned that courage looks like showing up to practice when practice is everything. The night before my first big transfer home, an overnight to see if the walls of my apartment remembered me, I lay awake and listened to the building breathe. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed the laugh of a person who just did something no one thought they could do. I pressed my palm to my sternum and said out loud, "We're doing this," to the part of me that still wanted permission. My apartment had been changed by hands that knew what they were doing. Doorways widened without losing their dignity. A ramp where steps had once ruined my mornings. Grab bars where tile used to lie about being trustworthy. Jules met me at the door with a clipboard and a grin. "We're going to make this place function like it loves you," she said. We orchestrated the ballet of small things. Where to put mugs, how to store pots, which hooks would take the weight of a day when shoulders had done too much. That night I sat in my own living room and listened to the refrigerator hum and cried because it sounded like home. I wheeled to the window and named the streetlights like old friends. Back in the bedroom, I looked at the bed like a mountain and then remembered the steps, the board, the angles, the breath. Jules let me fail once without letting me fall. The second try landed. "You did that," she said so matter-of-factly that my pride had no choice but to behave. In the morning back at rehab, David high-fived me like we'd won a playoff game. Real life reps, he said. That's the work. Not every day was a victory lap. There were UTIs that ambushed plans and spasticity that turned muscles into overachievers and fatigue that made me weep over a dropped fork. There were setbacks that felt like betrayals and setbacks that turned out to be information. There were moments in showers where I let the water be louder than my own thoughts and came out cleaner in ways that had nothing to do with soap. Claire and I kept unbraiding old patterns. You learned that being believed was conditional, she said. We are going to keep telling your nervous system the new story. You say, I hurt, and the answer is not, prove it, it's, how do we help? I wrote that on a sticky note and put it where I would trip over it on purpose. One afternoon, between therapy and dinner, I opened my phone and found a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Rachel. How about a coffee in the lobby? I'm off in 10. We sat with paper cups and the kind of quiet that doesn't itch. She told me about the night shifts she loved and the ones she didn't. I told her about the dream where my legs were birds. Birds are messy, she said. They also fly. When the assistant district attorney finally visited, weeks later, she wore a suit the color of forgiveness and a face that didn't ask me to forgive anyone. She walked me through what would come next without turning it into a performance. I listened and felt my spine, metal and bone and insistence, hold me up in the way it could. When she left, I wheeled to the window and watched a storm invent itself over the parking lot. The first raindrops darkened the asphalt like the map of a country I was learning by heart. Night after night, I practiced small rebellions. Eating dessert first, saying no when my body said no, asking for help before I broke, laughing in rooms where I used to apologize for taking up space. Tara and I made a pact to tell each other the truth on the days we'd rather hide. I hate this, she'd say. I hate this too, I'd answer. Then we'd do our exercises anyway because sometimes defiance looks like finishing the set. The day I took my first stuttering step between the bars with David barely touching the belt, the room went brighter. It wasn't walking the way movies would film it. It was effort in letters as big as billboards. My arms shook. My breath was a metered thing. But the line between then and now moved. I felt it move. That night I texted myself a message to read when it got hard again. You stood. You stepped. You stayed. Later, alone, I thought about the backyard and the moment before the slip, the way a person knows when the ground has been made untrustworthy on purpose. I thought about the first voice that believed me and the hands that did not hesitate and the doctor who gave me uncertainty and hope in the same sentence. I thought about the detectives writing my words down like they were facts. I let the anger come and go like weather. I let the grief sit until it stopped shouting. I let the small, bright thing that keeps people alive unfold inside my ribs like a map. Tomorrow there would be more practice and more questions and more days when everything felt uphill. But tomorrow I would show up anyway because this is what people do when the floor drops out and they discover they are still here. They learn the angles, they build the muscles, they make the calls, they tell the truth, and they move, inch by inch, breath by breath, toward a life that fits the person they are now. And that is where I will leave this part of the story. On a Tuesday that could be any Tuesday in a gym that smells like determination and disinfectant, with my hands on the bars and my eyes on the mirror and the knowledge that the next step isn't pretty, it's possible. The rest, the charges, the hearings, the letters that arrive like ghosts, the work of turning survival into a way of living, that's coming. But first, one more step. Then another. Then we see what else this body, this spine, this stubborn heart can do. The week my discharge date was set, the gym windows swallowed the morning light and broke it into bright ribbons on the floor. David called it my graduation arc, which made me laugh because nothing about this felt like a neat ending. It felt like standing on a shoreline with a suitcase I hadn't packed for this kind of weather. Still, 15 minutes sitting unsupported. 7 steps between the bars with the CAFOs locked. Transfers without the board most days. The map was changing even if the country of my body still had disputed borders. The subpoena arrived tucked in a pale manila envelope that looked too unassuming for the weight it carried. Detective Sullivan didn't read me a speech. She brought a highlighter and a plan. We met in an empty therapy room after hours. The air held a faint trace of bleach and the distant bark of a therapy dog. She had me tell the story again, but slower, letting each piece land where it belonged. When I faltered on Jason's smirk, the way delight curdled to dread, she kept her pen still and waited. You're not performing, she said. You're documenting. Breathe. Own it. Claire handled the parts no highlighter could touch. You are not going to that courthouse to get your family back, she said, eyes steady. You're going to tell the truth where it matters. The outcome belongs to the court. The healing belongs to you. The night before trial tasted like tin and old coffee. Tara camped in my room with a paperback she never really read. Ready? She asked finally, shutting the book on a line she'd probably reread 10 times. No, I said. Good, she said. Then you'll be careful. She tightened the straps on the borrowed suit bag that hung over my chair. Wear the jacket that makes you sit taller. They all make me sit, I said. We both grinned, half feral, like soldiers sharpening humor because it's the only blade you're allowed to bring. The courthouse was colder than hospitals, which felt like a magic trick. Officer Chin met me at the side door and walked beside me through the echoing lobby. My wheels made a faint, traitorous squeak. Note to self. Silicone spray. Each revolution a metronome for the drum in my chest. Jason was already seated at the defense table in a navy suit with shoulders that didn't belong to his posture. He glanced up, flinched by a millimeter, and studied the grain of the wood like it might offer him a trapdoor. The bailiff called my name and every head seemed to turn by instinct, the way birds shift together when a shadow crosses their pattern. The 80, Kelly, helped position my chair next to the witness stand. Her voice had the calm of a person who'd learned how to carry urgency without spilling it. Take your time, she murmured, not as a command but as permission. The oath sat heavy in my mouth. I don't know why swearing to tell the truth always feels like an indictment of the times you weren't believed. Kelly took me through the day with a clinician's precision and a teacher's mercy. Before, during, after. The sheen on the wood like a second skin. The way sound can be a weapon. Laughter above you when you're already down. The way pain can be replaced by a silence that makes you question whether your body is still your home. She asked about the words. Walk it off, stop being dramatic, you're ruining the party, and I let them be ugly in the air where they belonged. I told them about Rachel's eyes finding mine and naming the emergency by its real name. I told them about Sarah's hands on the board, steady as a bridge, and about Mike's camera catching the light where oil should never have been. And when you said you couldn't feel your legs? Kelly asked. What happened then? Nothing, I said. Not from my family. From them there was nothing. The defense stood like he was getting up to stretch between acts. His smile had corners. Miss Matthews, you were upset that day, yes? Yes, I said. And you'd been drinking? 1 glass of wine, I said. Hours before. So you could have lost your balance. Decks don't smell like my father's wood oil, I said. And they don't shine like glass on a dry day. He opened his mouth for a follow-up and Kelly objected before he could shape it. Sustained. He tried another angle, something about me being clumsy as a child. A story Jason had sold so many times it was muscle memory. I broke my wrist when I was 7 because my brother pushed me, I said politely. The gallery shifted like wheat in a gust. They played the recording Mike took by the pool. Sarah narrating the slickness, the evidence file labeled on camera, the tape of Jason's voice saying, it was just a joke, like confession was a party trick. You could feel the room change. I know because it changed something inside me too. The trial staggered through a week like a man with rocks in his shoes. Witnesses. Photos. People I'd never met repeating details about my pain as if reading from a manual that, for once, matched my body. On the 6th day the jury filed in with their faces closed and their decision open. Guilty, the foreperson said. Reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily injury. The judge spoke about choices and foreseeable harm. 18 months in county, 3 years probation, restitution. Jason stared at the wood grain like it might still save him. My father pulled himself taller, then shorter, as if posture could rewrite history. My mother cried in the dignified way she'd been taught. Outside, reporters asked questions that were really statements. I gave them the gift of no sound. The courthouse steps were a steep metaphor I did not need to climb. Chin held the door. Sullivan stood like a windbreak. It won't feel like enough, Sullivan said. It might never. I nodded because I already knew. Back at rehab, the gym had become a village that knew me by the sound of my push rims. People whistled under their breath when they saw the verdict in my posture. David didn't make a speech. He brought out the CAFOs and said, let's move forward while forward is looking at us. 10 steps that day, arms burning, heart a drumline. He counted low and even. 8, 9, 10. When I sat, the chair caught me like a friend who knows your weight. Discharge came with a tote bag of supplies and a stack of instructions taller than the gratitude in my throat. Jules met me at my apartment and did the thing I didn't know I needed. She asked where I wanted things before she moved them. We mapped the kitchen like a puzzle. The mugs closest to the coffee. The heavy pots low, not high. The spices alphabetized, not because I'm that person, but because fatigue is the tax you pay on every decision and I needed to reduce spending. We practiced the bathroom transfer until we could have done it in the dark. We laughed when the shower chair squeaked like a rubber duck. We stopped laughing when the reality of a long night of nerve pain arrived. We pace, Jules said. We plot. We don't bargain with pain, we bargain with time. Finn arrived 2 weeks later, a golden retriever with eyes that understood paperwork. His trainer signed him over like a ceremony. He'll pick up dropped items, open doors, hit elevator buttons, bring you the phone, she said, listing tasks like magic tricks. What she didn't say was what he did best. Lay a warm head on my knee at 3 a.m. when my heart sprinted a lap without me. Rehab didn't end because I left the building. It crossfaded into my life like a new soundtrack. Outpatient 3 afternoons a week. Home exercises at the kitchen counter with Finn standing guard, head cocked like a coach. Rolling practice on sidewalks that had opinions. Wheelie practice over cracks that thought they were canyons. A fall in the bedroom that didn't end in a crisis because Jules had taught me the art of ground to chair like a dance. Elbow, fist, breathe, push. I learned to drive with hand controls, and the first time I merged onto the highway I cried between exits because freedom and fear used the same lane. The civil process unspooled slower than the criminal one, as if money had to take its time to feel real. Michael, my attorney, arrived with a life care plan that read like an instruction manual for surviving the next 40 years. Equipment that breaks and the price of replacing it. Braces that wear out and shoes that need ordering from catalogs you don't browse for fun. Meds. Home health 8 hours for the days the body calls in sick from being a body. Van maintenance. The math was indecent and necessary. Insurance hit its ceiling with a thunk. Restitution arrived in deposits that felt like apology written in currency. Their house sold. Accounts liquidated. A trust set up so every invoice wouldn't feel like a referendum on whether I deserved to live well. This buys space, Michael said. Space is oxygen. It was a kind of mercy I could bank. My parents came by once after that, the ramp announcing them before the doorbell did. My father stood inside the doorway like he wasn't sure he'd been invited into this version of my life. My mother carried a tin of cookies like a treaty. We sat. We did not talk about Florida or real estate agents or how narratives mutate in warmer climates. We did not talk about guilt. It hung in the room like a high picture no one could reach to straighten. Finally, my mother said, "We didn't know what to do." I said, "You call 911. She nodded like she'd learned a simple math fact too late to pass the test. My father said, "We raised you to be strong." I am, I said. But strength is not a substitute for care. They left with the tin half empty and the room left to refill itself with air I could breathe. Jason wrote from county on paper that smelled like disinfectant and cheap soap. The handwriting I knew, slanted like corners taken too fast. He said the words not badly, not beautifully. He said he was sorry without a but. He said he was learning things he should have learned as a boy. How to listen when someone else was talking, how to sit with discomfort without turning it into a joke. He said he didn't expect forgiveness and wouldn't ask to see me. I read it twice. I put it in a drawer with the manuals I don't throw away. The first time I spoke in public after, it wasn't in a courtroom. It was in a school library that smelled faintly of dry erase markers and dust jackets. The district had asked me to lead a workshop on trauma-informed classrooms. I didn't tell them my legs were shaking under the table even with the braces locked. I opened with a story about a child who says stomach ache when she means I'm not safe. I watched 20 teachers soften in their shoulders when I said, "Compliance is not learning. Silence is not wellness." We practice scripts that don't shame. "What happened to you today?" instead of "What's wrong with you?" At the end, a teacher in the back raised her hand and asked, "How do we do this every day?" "Together," I said. "And imperfectly." Thomas entered my life sideways, the way good things do when you're busy looking dead ahead. He was a neuro-PT who came to the clinic twice a week to consult on gnarly cases. He had hands that communicated boundaries without touching and a voice that made instructions sound like cooperation. We started as colleagues by proximity, trading tricks for alleviating spasticity, debating the best gloves for pushing in rain. One day he texted me a photo of a dog I didn't know but immediately loved, wearing a bandana that said intern. Quinn, he wrote. Learning to be useful. I sent back a photo of Finn on the couch like a monarch. Senior staff, I wrote. Coffee happened. Then a walk that was more of a roll. Then dinner at my table where we burned the garlic because we were talking about music and the way grief rearranges a room. He didn't reach for my chair without asking. He asked anyway. I said yes most times and no sometimes, and neither answer startled him. When he said, I like you exactly as you are, it didn't clang against my ribs like a platitude. It landed like water. Anniversaries surprised me by being many things at once. On the 1st August after, I took the long way home on purpose, looped past a block I hadn't visited since before. The air smelled like hot sidewalks and someone grilling corn. A little boy on a scooter sped past and yelled, "Watch out." Not like a warning but like an invitation to the game of existing. I went by the old house once later in a rental car with hand controls that stuck a little. The deck was still there, banal in the way trauma sites always are, like a stage after the show. Sunflowers leaned against the fence like they were eavesdropping. I did not go in. I did not need the scene to explain itself. On the morning of the 2nd anniversary I woke with my body humming. Not pain, not yet, just information. I brewed coffee while Finn supervised and wrote a list on a yellow sticky note. Meds, stretches, emails, lunch with Tara, clinic at 3, call with Michael, Zoom with the district, text Thomas Ree. Friday, water the geranium. A life. If you held it up to the light you could see the seams. But the seams were strong. Kelly, the AD, invited me to the sentencing even though the outcome was already drafted in the scaffolding of the plea. I wrote a victim impact statement and edited it until it wasn't an indictment and wasn't a performance. Just an accounting of what was lost and what was rebuilt and what still costs more than it should. In court, I read it in a voice that surprised me with its steadiness. I didn't look at Jason until the end, and when I did, I said the thing I needed to hear as much as he needed to hear it. You don't get to decide who I am now. People ask about forgiveness like it's a switch you find on a wall if you fumble long enough. What I have is not that. What I have is a refusal to carry what does not belong to me, and a willingness to carry what does, even on bad days. What I have is a life I recognize in the mirror. The scar that traces down my back like a zipper. The braces that make short distances possible. The chair that makes long ones inevitable and free. A dog who answers to his name and to mine. A man who knows how to make a kitchen into a place where laughter can sit down and stay. What I have is work that matters. Teachers who email at 11 p.m. to say, the script worked. He stayed. He breathed. He did math again. Some nights still crack open. Nerve storms roll in and the barometric pressure inside my spine drops. On those nights, I text Thomas one word, storm, and he replies anchor, which isn't a solution but is a companion. I take the meds and do the stretches and move my legs with my hands like a prayer. I tell my body I am on her side now, even when she's on fire. I watch the ceiling until it gives up its secrets. Morning arrives eventually, as rude and as reliable as ever. There's a moment in every video I make now where I decide whether to ask for anything. It used to feel crass, this business of likes and subscribes, but then I realized it was a way to build a bench long enough for more people to sit. So I do it the only way that feels honest. I look into the lens and say, if you're still here, if you followed me through the fall and the sirens in the room with fluorescent lights that see everything, if you've sat through courts and clinics and kitchens and the kind of nights that challenge a person's vocabulary for pain, then you know why this matters. If anyone has ever told you to walk it off, when your body whispered something was wrong, I am sorry. I believe you. And I want more people to hear stories like this. Not to gawk, but to know what to do when it's their turn to step forward, to call 911, to say the emergency out loud. So tap the like button. It's a tiny act with a big ripple. Subscribe if you want to keep walking, rolling, crawling, limping, laughing through this with me. I don't promise happy endings. I promise honest middles and the kind of stubborn hope that learns your first name. I end the videos the way I end most days, with gratitude shaped like a list. Rachel, who parted a crowd with a sentence. Sarah and Mike, who turned a backyard into a crime scene because that's what it was. Dr. Martinez, who gave me uncertainty and hope in the same hand. Marcus, who made bureaucracy feel like a bridge. David and Tasha, who treated 3 seconds like a stadium. Tara, who brought a plant and a way forward. Kelly and Sullivan and Chin, who made my story legible to a system that often likes its paperwork better than its people. Jules, who taught my apartment to love me back. Michael, who built a scaffold out of numbers so art could happen here. The art of ordinary living. Finn, who is an expert in presence. Thomas, who knows when to reach and when to wait and when to make pasta that tastes like a decision to stay. If you asked me for a thesis, I'd give you this. We are not only what was done to us. We are what we build next. The next thing doesn't erase the last thing. It makes room around it. My legs don't do what they did. My life does things I didn't know it could. 2 years after the fall, I rolled into the clinic one Tuesday with rain on my sleeves and a grin I couldn't shake. We're doing the curb cut today, David announced like he hadn't decided that 5 minutes earlier because I looked reckless. I popped the casters up, felt the balance point click and cleared the lips smooth. A little whoop went up in the room because even professionals can't help it when joy bolts through. Again, I said. And again. I did it until my arms said no, and then once more for the part of me that believes in victory laps even if they're tiny. On the way out, a new patient watched from the doorway with the face of someone negotiating with a brand new world. Does it get easier? He asked. No, I said, then softened my voice. You get stronger. And you get better at deciding what deserves your strength. On the bus home, a kid across the aisle looked at my chair with pure, unfiltered curiosity. Do you go fast? He asked. Sometimes, I said. Wanna see? His mom smiled weary permission and I did a controlled roll to the end of the aisle and back. He clapped like I'd pulled a coin from behind his ear. Cool, he said. I thought about how many rooms in my childhood would have been different if someone had used that word for me when I told the truth. Cool. Not inconvenient. Not dramatic. Not a problem to manage. Just a person in motion. I still pass mirrors and startle sometimes, not at the chair or the braces or the line of the scar, but at the expression on my face. It's not triumphant. It's not tragic. Present. Like I've shown up to my own life without apologizing for the noise it makes. One last thing, because someone will ask, am I happy? The answer is messy. I am grateful in ways that make me tearful in grocery store aisles. I am furious on Thursdays for no reason and on birthdays for very good ones. I am in love with a dog, a man, a job that lets me metabolize harm into tools. Some days I curse stairs under my breath. Some nights I dream I am running and wake up laughing, not crying. Here. And here is not where I thought I'd be, but it's where I am building a life that fits. If this found you at the right time, I'm glad you stayed. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what part of this put a hand on your shoulder. Tell me if you need a sentence to use tomorrow when someone you love says, it hurts, and the room needs a new script. Write it in the comments so someone else can borrow it. Tap like so the story travels. Subscribe so you can come back when the next chapter needs a witness. This isn't an ending. It's a road sign. You are here. The rest bends ahead. Bring water. Bring company. Bring that stubborn hope. We'll go together.